Malcolm Gladwell is one of those thinkers who, even if you don't know the name, you've probably heard his ideas. Take the broken windows theory, that small crimes lead to big crimes.
Social phenomena behave like epidemics.
Gladwell wrote about it and brought it into the mainstream. Or how about the 10,000-hour rule? How long it takes to truly master something. That's from a Gladwell book too. And he's not only a best-selling author, he's a podcaster, a journalist, and a bit of a rock star. Right now, he's on tour promoting his new book, Talking to Strangers.
We talk about race first. What it allows us to do is to not do anything.
Right. I don't know if my mind was changed, but it certainly was opened. Oh, gee, I never thought of it that way before.
This one is called Talking to Strangers.
Gladwell says it's his angriest work yet, where he dissects why we are so bad at figuring out other people, and yet it's something we tend to think we're quite good at. Maybe you think you understand what drives someone like Donald Trump or Greta Thunberg, or maybe you don't. I had a chance to sit down with Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for making the time. I know you're busy.
Not at all.
So I've read the book, and I know that you've joked about the title of the book, because it sounds like the title of a wonderful self-help book about breaking the ice with people. This kind of introvert's Bible, but it's not quite that.
No, it's the anti-self-help book, I think, in some ways. But I do have I suppose a little bit of guilt over the fact that the title doesn't exactly telegraph perfectly. It's a book is a little bit dark in places.
So in one of the pages, you sum it up quite well, and you say, the death of Sandra Bland is what happens when we don't know how to talk to strangers. Can you explain why that case sort of formed the basis of everything in this book?
Yeah, the book begins and ends with this notorious case from 4 years ago involving a young African-American woman named Sandra Bland, who is in a small town in Texas for a job interview, gets pulled over by a police officer. They get into an argument. He drags her out of the car, arrests her. She commits suicide in her cell 3 days later. And it's a heartbreaking story on a million levels. They failed at the task of making each other comprehensible, particularly the police officer. He just gets Sandra Bland wrong over and over again. And each time he misunderstands her, the situation veers further and further out of control. That was the moment when I first listened to that videotape, when the idea for the book kind of crystallized in my head, because I thought there was something powerfully characteristic of the moment we're living in, where we're shouting at each other and we're misunderstanding what the other party is saying. If you look at the way in which particularly communities of color in America and law enforcement have come into very sharp conflict over the last several generations, it's because of that. It's because of a deliberate practice of training police officers to be suspicious of otherwise innocent activity. I talk in the book about people periodically do large-scale surveys of law enforcement people around the world and ask them, do you think there are reliable indicators that suspects give you when they're lying? And police officers overwhelmingly will say, for example, that if someone's talking to you like this, and they're kind of like, they're lying. Looking away, they're jiggling with their hands, maybe they're smiling nervously.
Right.
There is zero evidence that this is a reliable indicator of lying. So because we live in a world now where we are more and more dealing with people who are strangers to us, then the consequences of our errors are greater. If you're talking about digital interactions where you're getting brief little snippets of somebody, then you're in trouble.
Except you don't mention social media at all in this book, which seems to me like a bit of a peculiar choice in a book that's entirely about misunderstanding strangers. Is that something?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I don't take it seriously. There was a moment about 6 or 7 years ago during Arab Spring when everyone thought that Twitter was going to save the world. Did Twitter save the world? No, Twitter's not saving the world. I'm not even convinced that 5 years from now we're going to be on Facebook or Twitter. I think we're going to get over it. And I honestly think that the way in which the current President of the United States has used and abused that medium is doing more to discredit it as a form of communication than anything else. The next President of the United States, I'm convinced, will not tweet. I think she will, use much more.
She.
I think it's reasonable to assume it might be a woman. Yeah, I think she's going to use much more meaningful forms of interaction with the American population, and we will be delighted when this happens.
Well, okay. Well, now you're inviting the follow-up, which is to get Malcolm Gladwell on record with his prediction for 2020. The floor is yours.
I don't have a prediction. It won't. I don't think the current occupant will repeat as president. I think there's going to be somebody new. Chances are somebody new will be. There's a number of very strong female candidates. I have a personal preference. I don't know whether she's going to win, but Kamala Harris, her father is Jamaican. My mother is Jamaican.
Yes.
So I emailed her father and said, because he's from the same town where my mother went to school, and he said, well, it's interesting you email me, because when I went to university at the University of West Indies, I had a professor who encouraged me to take mathematics, which is why I ended up as an economist, and he teaches at Stanford University, Kamala Harris's father. Who was that professor? My father.
No kidding.
Yeah, so if she wins the presidency, I want to make a claim that if her father had not met my father, he would not have taken mathematics, he would not have become an economist, which means he would not have met Kamala Harris's mother, which means that Kamala Harris would not have become president. So I'm going to take personal Gladwell family credit if this happens.
I have to. So let me back up for a second. So you brought up Donald Trump.
Uh-huh.
Do you think we actually understand Donald Trump?
Donald Trump? I think it's a reasonable conclusion that he's a narcissist. We know he doesn't really read things. We know that he's pretty thin-skinned. He's not a stranger to us anymore. In fact, I have more exposure to Donald Trump over the last 3 years than I do to many members of my own family. I mean, I read his tweets every day. I see him on the television. I've heard him now speak for what must be combined many hours. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that we have some genuine insight into him.
To use the language that you use in the book, is Donald Trump an example of someone who is matched, or?
Oh, he is so matched, it's unbelievable.
He is what he appears to be.
He is what he appears to be. He tells you what's on his mind. People, I think, stress too much the fact that he's deceitful. I don't think of him as deceitful. So in the case of this most recent scandal, the Ukrainian thing, everyone else around him is trying to deceive us. He is totally transparent. I called the man. He just doesn't think it's a crime, right? And most of the cases, it's not that he's lying, it's that he genuinely does not see why, when he is being himself, that's a problem. Part of his appeal is precisely that. He seems to be highly authentic to those who like him, and that's because he is genuinely representing the contents of his heart on his face.
What if I flip it? What if we talk about someone like Greta Thunberg? Mm-hmm. A vast number of people revere her, think of her as a hero, but I'd be willing to wager they probably don't actually know much about her.
Yeah.
But so many people have come to a snap judgment about who she is, what she stands for, and what she wants, and what drives her. What do you think about that?
Well, I would say that she's a teenager. My guess is she's going to be around for a long time. So we will have an opportunity to get to know her and to adjust and perfect our understanding of who she is and what her motives are. So this is a classic example of what we ought to do when confronted with a stranger, which is it's completely fine to have an impression, but just be willing to update that impression as more information and evidence is gathered. The wrong model is to decide right now that she's either a saint or a fraud and stick to that and stop gathering additional information. I can point to 1,000 different ways in which we make that mistake in our lives. We lock ourselves into a position and say, I met that person, I don't trust him, and we walk away. Well, you can't come to an accurate conclusion about whether someone is trustworthy based on 10 seconds of interaction.
And this is, timely advice, particularly because we have a federal election where people are going to be making judgments, not just about political parties and about their platforms and policies, but about the leaders. You would say what to them?
I would say concentrate on what they believe in and concentrate on what they intend to do and concentrate very little on a personal assessment of your particular beliefs about who they are or what they're like.
Because we don't know them.
Because you don't know them. And because that can only mislead you. In fact, in my perfect world, we would never personally see the people running for office. We would only hear them. We would hear what they have to say about their view of society, what they think of problems are, and how they intend to fix those problems. That's what matters. What if you were just told it's A, B, C, D, E, and F? Here's what they believe in. Make your choice.
Malcolm, what a joy to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.